see the drippy, I'm fitted up. Hop in my car and the giddy up. Secure the bag, yeah, I get.
Welcome back to another episode of Lone Star College Football. Tonight we're going to be asking ourselves the question, was the 2022 season a waste for the Baylor Bears? But before we get into that, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Man, we are at 94 subscribers at the time of this recording. We're trying to get to 100 before the end of the season. That way we can do this $25 giveaway. Make sure to also go to TikTok and Twitter. Check us out there. Our TikTok's been doing pretty good here recently, making fun of a lot of A&M people. Seems to get us some more views. Anyways, so let's go ahead and jump into this 2022 recap for the Baylor Bears. So just looking at our record, we went 6-6, 4-5 in the conference, which is terrible, in my opinion. It's a lot better than what it used to be, but it's not at all what anybody expected. But it was a season full of streaks. We had one win against Albany. Then we had one loss against BYU on the road, which we should have won. We had two wins against Texas State and then Iowa State on the road. And then we had two losses, one at home against Oklahoma State and one in Morgantown to West Virginia. Another one we should have won. And then we won three straight, going back home to play against Kansas for homecoming. And then we went on the road to Texas Tech and to Norman, Oklahoma, and won both of those games. And then we lost 3 in a row. Any chance that we had at the Big 12 championship was gone after we lost to Kansas State. But it's okay. I don't know if this season was a complete waste. I think that we could have potentially wasted a couple of people's years as far as players. Now, redshirt sophomore Blake Shapen. A lot of people are putting most of the season's blame on his back. Personally, I've done it. You can ask Christian. There's some games I'm like, why don't we just throw Kyron in there to see what can happen? I mean, what's it going to hurt? Especially in these last couple of games. TCU, now that one was a game that we could have won and probably should have won if we could have just got a first down on those last two drives. Now this Texas game, I think that we should have thrown in Kyron. That way we could avoid him hitting the transfer portal, or at least try to. Like today he announced that he would be testing the waters in the transfer portal, and I don't know how I feel about that going into the bowl game with Blake Shapen and Luke Anthony, and Lord forbid that Blake Shapen gets hurt. But Blake Shapen finished with a 64 completion percentage, 222 completions on 345 attempts for 2,600 yards, 16 touchdowns, 10 picks, 20 sacks. Now, I will say that those 20 sacks, I would say less than half of them are because of our offensive line not picking up their guys. I think more of that is Blake Shapen holding on to the ball, thinking about it too much, not wanting to make a mistake, especially here in the second half of the season where he's been seeing people push back on him, blaming him for losses, blaming him for things that shouldn't have happened, and everything else. So he's thinking about it way too much, especially with those picks. You can tell in the picks in the last month of November, he threw 5 alone, and that's compared to 3 touchdowns. Now, true freshman Richard Reese. This is probably my highlight of the season. Is Richard Reese is a standout running back. He's one of the guys that if he would have got carries against BYU and against Texas State, and there was a game that he had, I think it was Oklahoma. I believe he had the flu, or flu symptoms is what they came out and said. He would have easily had over 1,000 yards had we given him the ball. We probably would have beat BYU if he had ran the ball. I think he only ran it 6 times in that game. Dude had 14 touchdowns and led the Big 12 for a while until he got sick. And then after he got sick, his production just dropped off. Squirrel Williams, he had a pretty good season as well. I mean, our top 3 backs all averaged over 5 yards a carry. Richard Reese, 190 attempts for 962 yards, averaging 5.1 with 14 touchdowns. Craig Squirrel Williams, 94 attempts, 532 yards, averaging 5.7 with 4 touchdowns. Quaylon Jones, 87 attempts, 448 yards, 5.1 average with 7 touchdowns. And then it goes to Blake Shapen, 71 attempts, 104 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns, which is more than I thought. But I think one reason that we struggled on offense this season, I say struggle, but we averaged like 33 points a game, which isn't bad at all. But I think one downside was we couldn't find a receiver that we could just stick with, and he was our main target, which is also a good thing in some cases. Like we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys over 100 yards receiving. I think we spread the ball out pretty well. It's just there's some games where Gavin Holmes went off. He had one game, I believe he was over 200 yards. I forgot the exact number. But he still ended up the season only having 22 receptions for 470 yards, 3 touchdowns. Monterey Baldwin was hurt for a little bit of the season. 33 receptions, 565 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Now, these next 2 guys, I'm actually really shocked that they came out closer to the end of the season. Hal Presley, 31 catches, 374 yards, 3 touchdowns. And my unsung hero, I say that, but if he was a hero, we would have won more games anyways. But Josh Cameron, 25 catches, 330 yards, 0 touchdowns. That's why he's the unsung hero. He has 0 touchdowns, but if we needed a first down, we were going to Josh. Josh, we saw him come up at the end of the season, just making plays when we needed them. Now, Ben Sims, 31 catches, 255 yards, and only 3 touchdowns. I want to see that number up higher. Now, I will miss Ben Sims, and I am sending prayers to Drake Dabney for a speedy recovery and a healthy recovery after he, I believe, broke his fibula. You hate to see that. He's a great young athlete, man. I mean, we saw it whenever he jumped over. I think it was Oklahoma State. He had a nice hurdle in that game. He was also another one of those guys that we needed to make plays. 16 yards, 16 receptions, 173 yards. Quaylon Jones in that Texas game had a couple of toe drags on the boundary that were nice. 23 catches, 135 yards, 0 touchdowns. Jalen Ellis came out of nowhere in that Texas game. 2 receptions, 97 yards, and 1 touchdown, which Blake could have hit him on a couple of more, but things happen. Blake Shapen started overthinking. He just didn't want to overthrow anybody, is what it looked like to me. Now, moving on to the defensive side of the ball. Al Walcott led us with 80 total tackles, 40 solo, 40 assists, and 2 sacks, a pick, 5 passes defended. I think he had a pretty good season as far as being a safety for the first year being a star. Anyways, trying to fill in the Jalen Petrie shoes. Now, one guy on the defense I was actually very surprised and happy to see out there was true freshman Devin Lemire. Dude had 31 tackles, 21 assists, so 52 total tackles, 2 picks, 4 passes defended, and a 31-yard pick return. I don't think he scored on any of those. No, he didn't. But he did have a forced fumble and 2 fumble recoveries, which is pretty big. Randolph, this dude was all over the place. I could have swore he had more than 4.5 sacks. Day Paul, 4.5 sacks. Matt Jones, 2.5 sacks. Now, one thing I am sad to see is Dylan Doyle having 0 sacks. But he did have 2 picks. So, I mean, that helps. But, Al Walcott forcing 3 of them. 3 forced fumbles. That's crazy. I think our defense actually played good-ish for the most part. I think the one thing that our whole team struggled with was playing complementary football. Sorry about that. But team stats. Total points per game, 33.6. We ended up with only 54 touchdowns. Let's look. Gave up 20 sacks through 11 interceptions. Goodness gracious. It kind of hurts looking at these numbers. And our turnover ratio is a whopping 1. 1. Last year was 12, and we were Big 12 champions. And I believe we finished 5th. Yeah, we finished 5th. Now, Kyron Drones did hit the portal today, which I hate to see, but I got a feeling I'm going to make another video on that. Now we wait. We just got to wait and see who we play in the bowl game. I've seen a lot of people talking about Arkansas. I've seen a lot of people saying that we're going to play in the Texas Bowl and everything else. Another piece of news today. Richard Reese, Big 12 Freshman of the Year, I don't think a lot of people will argue with that. I think that he is very well deserving of it. Now, let's move on to, was it a waste? Yes and no. Feel like we could have had Richard Reese a better season. Feel like without injuries, Monterey Baldwin would have had a better season. If we could just get Blake Shapen to settle down and our fans would give him a minute, including myself, I've been really critical on him. It's frustrating because he's a young quarterback. I mean, I know if I went out there, I'd be struggling. I don't know. Our defense played pretty good. Our young secondary, I feel like there was a couple times, 2 that I can think of off the top of my head was a TCU game, giving up 2 blown coverage, deep bombs for first downs on big plays when we needed a stop. This BYU game, we should have won. I hated watching that game. I stayed up till like 2 in the morning watching that game just to watch us miss, I think, 2 field goals. They missed a field goal for us to go into overtime, actually. The first one. West Virginia, another one of those games. Just, why did we lose? Why? But, to be honest, if I had to put the blame on somebody, I'm putting it on Jeff Grimes. Man, Jeff Grimes, like, if you sit there and watch the game and you understand football and you're not just a casual, you're going to question the play calls. Why are we running a bubble screen on 3rd and 10 or plus? I saw him running on 3rd and 18. I get that we go for it on 4th downs, but why are we going on a bubble screen on 3rd and 18 whenever we're trying to pick up 15 yards so we can go for a 4th and manageable at least? There's a lot of things that Blake Shapen could have done, a lot of better reads he could have made. A lot of times that he should have slid earlier, like in the West Virginia game when he got hurt and had to go into concussion protocol. Got to get down sooner if you're going to slide. If you're not going to slide, run somebody over. He was the number 1 shortstop recruit in the state of Louisiana on top of being the number 1 quarterback recruit in the state of Louisiana in the years that he was being recruited. I forgot what class he was in. I think 2020. Yeah, 2020, I believe. Dang, he's my age. Crazy. Could the season gone better? Yes. I had stupid high expectations. I thought we were going to go 11-1, which more realistically was probably like 9-3, 8-4, with the ceiling. With the floor of 6-6. I was thinking more like a 7-5 floor. And what am I thinking here? I think we could have really went undefeated, but that was at the beginning of the season. Once the season started, I started watching us, and I knew that it wasn't any good. I knew it wasn't going to end up being good after we lost to BYU, and then turn around and watch BYU get smacked around by, I think, Oregon week 3. I knew it wasn't going to be a good one. But if you made it this far in the video, Thank you guys. Make sure to subscribe and like the video. Drop some comments on some things you want to see next. See what y'all want us to cover. Again, make sure to check us out on TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. And I appreciate y'all. Sick 'em.